Hey everybody, here we are at River Polaris Arctic Cat for another edition of AK Sled Shed.
So Chris, clothing, it's always a struggle to keep your temperature right so you're not too hot, not too cold, and back and forth. What do you guys do for clothing on the IronDog?
So one thing that you can leave. There's been times and multiple times where we left Big Lake and it was 38, 40 degrees out. There's water on the lake, and you take off, and when you get to McGrath, it's 25, 30 below, same day. So you have to be prepared for a massive temperature swing. So definitely having the right clothes to be able to do that is critical in the race, and just riding in general. Same thing. I mean, we encounter that all the time. We go up to the we're basically right up to the Alaska Range when we're practicing, and the temperature swing is massive. It can be warm up there, and we hit the river. It can be super cold. It's just so we want to be prepared. Prepared when you go there. I learned the hard way, leaving the parking lot at 25 degrees one year, and on the way back it was 25 below the same day, and it was not prepared for 25 below. Wasn't carrying any extra gear, nothing, and it was miserable. I mean, we were actually going so slow, and I'm tucked to the machine trying to just stay warm. I've learned from that, so I typically carry a few clothes with me so that if you get stuck in that scenario. So one thing is I tend to wear very little clothes. So when you're riding pretty aggressive, you're producing a lot of heat. Two things with that. One thing is I prefer, really it's the moisture that's really going to hurt you later on when it's cold. So you want a good, breathable, waterproof shell or outerwear to keep you from getting wet or getting that moisture in your body. You're sweating a lot, and you want that sweat to get out, whether it's through venting, through a good Gore-Tex that actually is breathable and that actually can vent out that moisture. You want to I prefer to actually ride a little bit cold. So I would prefer to be a little bit cold. It seems goofy, but once you mentally are prepared to be a little bit cold, and I'm not freezing, but I'm not shivering cold, but I prefer to be a little bit on the cold side as opposed to on the warm side, because again, as soon as I start feeling myself get warm and you start sweating, that produces that moisture. So I prefer to be a little bit on the chilled side instead of on the hot side. And when I do, I instantly am adjusting, either opening vents or stopping, cooling down, maybe taking off a layer. So that's kind of I guess I'll just get kind of right into what I typically wear and why and how. Like I was saying, I wear a very minimalist type. I prefer I wear the Valdez parka just because it's a highly breathable, waterproof. It's super rugged. It's just a shell, so there's no insulation at all. So the advantage is you can wear it with very little gear and to stay cool, but you can also layer up with it and stay warm. So I prefer the non-insulated myself, just because I'm not going to be doing the standing around, or we're riding in bumps or through the trees where we're producing a lot of heat. If you're a rider that maybe you're just riding on the lakes or rivers or groomed trails, maybe an insulated system works for you to stay a little bit warmer if you're cold. But for me, I'd rather have the option to layer and not have to worry about being too hot any given time.
So do you normally ride with the vents open on your jacket, or?
So again, that's a good one. I tend to, when I start getting hot, I like I said, instantly stop, and typically I'll like I said, I typically think that I have the right layers on, that I kind of looking at the day ahead, to kind of try to plan ahead. Like I said, sometimes not so well, but the different vents do different things. So you can have say partial vents open. The pit zips, or like these these arm zips on this, it's amazing how much airflow flows through like the arms. I mean, it used to just be the pit zips and, you know, but with these you get these, you know, like say like these back, and it really flows through your whole jacket. When I get really hot, what I tend to do is I don't usually zip this down and ride like that, ride with this open, just because the wind's flopping around and I don't like that. But what I will do is I'll do the opposite. I'll actually go like this, so that this is, and again, it might be like Superman going down the river, but it's you know, keeps me comfortable and I can get a lot of airflow. That's when I really need to get a lot of airflow. You know, kind of talked a little bit with the helmets and stuff. One thing that you know, everybody's different. You know, there's what works for me might not work for you or somebody else. So, you know, I tell people all the time, like in the rookie workshop that does the IronDog, that, you know, it's really about you trying what works for you. You know, again, I kind of have a mental note of what works for me at different temperatures. I'll tell you what I typically wear is I wear this, again, the shell, and I wear an actual wool is what I prefer to wear, the merino wool for an underlayer, and this is essentially all I wear. Not all the time, but this is like, I would say 70% of my riding, this is all I'm wearing, is this and this. Something to consider too is that I do wear protective gear, so that's another layer of insulation. You know, I wear a and again, this is what I'll wear on the bottom too. And that's it. In the bottom, I typically, you know, even when it's cold, I don't wear a lot of clothing on the bottom. I don't need it. I guess I don't feel like I get cold down below. But I also wear, you know, again, a couple protective things that are a little bit warmer than, say, if you don't wear it. When we switched like IronDog, we weren't required to wear really any protective gear when I first started, and then eventually when they started following some standardized rules, we had to wear like a tech vest and stuff like that. I don't ride without a tech vest, even play riding or mountain riding. It's part of I just wear it all the time for protection. I think it's invaluable. It's helped me out a lot. But again, I had to. At some point, when I switched over, it also changed what I was wearing. I wore way less, because this obviously this will have some heat. This is a very well ventilated vest. It's got holes and stuff in it, but it's still at the same time, it's still
insulating foam.
It is. It's insulating. So this definitely keeps some heat to you. Same with even like I wear these pants. I mean, these again, they're not super. You know, nothing that they're, you know, I like them because they have the padded butt on them, and it helps with chafing, and then it also has the protective pads, again, with warmth and stuff like that. But that means I wear almost nothing on my bottom. I mean, Klein makes like a -1.0, which is actually a cooling one, and I wear that a lot, just that alone. Maybe they make it in the poly if I'm not wearing the wool. You know, Klein makes like a 1, 2, and 3, and of course each one steps up for temperatures, and I can mix and match. Typically, I wouldn't even wear just like say straight 3, because that's really, unless if I know I'm on the river, it's going to be 30 below. I'm not going to be, you know, getting a bunch of heat. I'll layer way up, but this is basically, like I said, this is 90% of what I'm wearing, and then if I know it's going to be 25 below or colder, I might put on maybe add another layer like this, like a 2.0, where it's just like a poly. Sometimes some things with a neck, just to help with the heat there. If I know that I'm just riding on the river and it's 25 below, and I'm not going to be getting a bunch of wood riding, or I'm going to be sweating to death, I typically carry this. Actually, I carry one of these in my windshield bag all the time. So I have one of these with me, and this is great. Like when we're out riding, there's a lot of nights where, you know, we take off. Again, this is all I'm wearing. On the way back, we get up into the mountains, and it's actually pretty warm. And when we're coming back, we get on the river, and again, the temperature maybe drop 10, 15 below. And from there to the parking lot, you know, it's an hour away, but it's cold, and we're not doing a lot of movement, so I'll stop and and when we're getting our fuel last time, I can throw this on really quick, and it's this makes a huge difference on just
So
something
25
like
below, that's your insulating layer.
colder than 25 below. Yes,
Yeah.
this is it.
Wow.
That's all I typically wear. Now on the river, if we're on the Yukon, for instance, like in the IronDog, and we know that we're going from checkpoint to checkpoint, that there's very few bumps. You're going 80 to 100 mile an hour the whole time. You're not moving around. You're not producing any heat at all. That's when I step up into an actual. I will wear. I might even wear this, and then I'll even put on a something with some thin slate. Even I've worn something as heavy as this underneath before, just because again I know that I'm not going to be moving, and I just want something warm that I can layer up with. So it could get that extreme. Again, I don't typically do that, but I carry a torque jacket with me also. Not only do I carry the Inferno, I carry the torque with me. Those are the two jackets I actually carry. I carry it in a backpack. The heavier jacket, it's really about if I break down and I'm more worried about that than I am like riding. I don't really get cold, but if I break down, I'm worried about losing that heat, and I'm not really working anymore. If we're working on our sleds, I'll get cold. I'll stop and I'll either throw this on or grab my torque jacket and put it on. Even sometimes if we're just going to be, say, working on sleds, I'll just grab one of these torque jackets that's, the next thinner one of this, and I'll just put it on over so I'm not even unzipping anything. I'll just throw it on top just to keep some heat in while we're working and I'm not freezing. Kind of more of a, keep that with me more for survival than I do riding with it. Like I said, rarely. Again, I have used it on the Yukon when it was 40, 50 below, but typically I wouldn't wear that as my normal underlayer.
Now you mentioned traveling down the Yukon River. I know I've heard horror stories about people going through the ice, and I know you guys go across Norton Sound, and
Yep.
I've heard about some crazy water skipping activities
Yeah,
out there.
not that I want to encourage water skipping, but if you don't have to do it, don't do it. You just never, but you definitely want to know what the current conditions are. Here in Alaska, we're always, that's what we use the rivers and the lakes for. That's how we travel. So, you're always on water, and you need to be prepared for it. Well, one thing that Klein did come out with is this rift jacket. Some of the manufacturers have them. It actually has like a flotation type system in it to help. So if you do go in the water, it's obviously a little bit heavier insulated because of it. But again, some people like having that extra layer of insulation, especially if you're not wearing the tech vest and stuff. But this could at some point in your life, save your life.
How about hands and feet?
Yep,
What do you
hands
do
and
to
feet. So
keep your
I
hands
wear a
and
couple
feet?
different things. I wear like the climb boots for my feet. I also wear bunny boots in Alaska, because if you do get wet, and I have gotten wet multiple times, I've fallen through and I've been in the water. So I do know what that's like. And if you're out in the middle of nowhere, bunny boots, you'll get wet. You can kind of dump the water out. Sometimes I don't even do that. I'll, maybe just do this and get the majority of the water out, and it warms the water up, and it has enough insulation that you're fine. So I really do like when I'm out remote. In the springtime, as things get warmer, and I really do like my climb for the extra ankle support, and they breathe. Bunny boots don't breathe, and so your feet are sweating. Good socks, thick socks. Again, even with the bunny boot, your feet aren't breathing, so just constantly changing socks. It seems like. But
Do you do multiple layers, or you just do?
I
one
don't.
layer?
I just do one layer. That's pretty much all I do. I used to do a couple, like a thin layer and a thicker layer, but things moving around and socks falling down. I like the little bit longer sock that stays up. And gloves is another one. I've gone back and forth on gloves, on what style of gloves. I've frostbitten my hands multiple times, so my hands have poor circulation, and so I prefer to have a little bit thicker. I've gone from I used to wear thick gloves to a super thin, almost nothing glove. to now I wear, this is what I wear pretty much for all temperatures, but I also do wear gauntlets all the time. So I always have gauntlets on my handlebars. That makes a huge difference, obviously. So
What kind of gauntlets do you use?
I wear actually the Climb. I use the Climb ones.
Climb?
Yeah, most of the time. The Climb, they actually make I think the handlebar muff that they make for it, and it's makes a huge difference for that wind. Just that wind protection makes a huge difference. So I'm able to get away with a thinner glove. I prefer the feel of it, but this is essentially what I've, probably the last 5-6 years. This is what I wear 90% of the time. When it gets super cold, again, having a couple different options, and I do carry thicker gloves in my rig. I carry them with me in case it gets cold, but I'll have a thicker glove like this. I don't have them with me, but like Climb makes liners, like a 1, 2, and 3, I believe, and I do carry like the 1 or the 2 with me. I always have them with me, and I actually have them in my pocket. If it gets cold out, I can actually put them on with this style glove or a thicker glove like this.
So how many pairs of gloves do you normally have when you're running on the IronDog on your machine?
So I typically, in the IronDog, I typically only have my 1 point, my liners and this, but then I also carry, again, when we kind of talk about the survival side of it, things, I don't ride with these mittens, just because of the, you want the dexterity and stuff. But if I break down, these are, I can have I can be wearing those gloves, especially like those glove liners. I can be wearing those glove liners, put those on, and if I need to do something, work on a sled, I've got the super thin gloves that it's not over, but it's also not bare metal touching 50 below metal that's, your fingers are freezing instantly, so you have a little bit of protection with the liner. Like this glove here actually has a liner in it, so it's nice because you can take it out. And again, if you need to have there's different thicknesses, and like I said, I wear some that are thinner than this that like I just keep in my pocket. So if we have to work, Mike actually was the one that always had a little thin pair of gloves, and I adopted it last year. And then we went riding one time when it was super cold, and I actually put those liners with this, and it made a huge difference. But when I'm out practicing and I'm out just not racing, I do carry 2 sets or one. I carry a spare set of these so that when my hands get wet, I can put on a dry set. I don't wait until it's too late. Once they get wet, I also carry I have a bag under the hood so I can actually put these in there. Also the Polaris windshield bags have they get warm, so that's where I keep my spare set, is in my windshield bag, so that they can dry out, and then I swap them out if I need to. When you're doing the IronDog and stuff, you get if your hands aren't tough enough, but when you've built up the calluses, when they're wet, they'll get destroyed by just wearing wet gloves. So the gauntlets actually kind of help with that. If it's maybe raining or snowing, really wet snow, they keep that water off. So you don't, again, it's one less thing I worry about. My teammate Mike, he rarely wears, even when it's really, really cold, he rarely uses gauntlets. He just can get away with it. But me, I can't. And again, I think there's a few advantages to it, again, when it's raining out and stuff. But as soon as my hands, once they get wet and I can start feeling them get wet, I will swap them out. But again, a good pair of gloves, Gore-Tex, like these, again, breathable, these really don't get wet unless, again, you actually, the only time these things get wet for me is like, again, when we stop and I might be working on something, I'm taking my glove on and off, and then it's actually me shoving snow in it. Right. Again, it's glove management, like goggle management. You got to make sure you take care of them, because at the end of that can ruin your day later on when everything's wet and you've, not proper management can really ruin a day. So something to think about. Same with again, one of those things you don't really think about, but maybe throwing in a hat if you. Whether it's you break down or you want to take your helmet off, and you still want to keep that heat in. Again, I typically throw this in my bag so I can just throw it on and keep the heat and stay warm without having my helmet on the whole time.
So is that's something you would typically do if you had a breakdown? Is you pull your helmet off, put a hat on, and
typically, like if I know it's a breakdown that we're going to be working on, I would typically just leave my helmet on. Typically, but if it's maybe if we're trying to get your head in into something,
Right,
or under the hood or under the skid where you want to take your helmet off, I would do that. Or if it's someplace we're going to stop, even sometimes like if we're going to stop and just BS and don't want to get cold. But again, if you break down, it might be something that again, it's just nice to have and easy to carry. Just going back to the layering system, just trying stuff out, figuring out what works for you, trying different layers. The poly or the wool. I started off with wool and really liked it, and then went to the poly, and then now I'm back to the wool again. And I really like the wool. I do wear some poly still. Again, the Climax that minus 1.0, which I gravitate to that on warmer days. But again, this is kind of my go-to.
And the main thing people want to remember is moisture management, right?
Moisture management. Cotton kills.
Yeah.
You don't want to be riding with cotton or a cotton hoodie because it'll get soaked, and it'll stay soaked. It won't.
If you're feeling warm, stop and get rid of a layer.
That's what, like you said, it's just that management, that moisture management. You can ask my IronDog partners because sometimes it drives them nuts. That I'm going down the trail and I get hot. I want to stop and open up some vents, but what that does is it really does, in the long run, saves your day because now I'm comfortable and I'm not going to overheat. And then later on, when it's super cold and I'm on the river and I've now completely soaked on the inside, I'm not going to be freezing on the river because I've managed it, whether, like you said, taking off a layer or opening up some vents. That's huge. It's absolutely huge.
All right.
So
awesome, Chris. Thank you very much for all your fantastic information. I've learned a lot today, and I've been snow machining for a lot of years, and I appreciate your time and sharing with folks.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.